Welcome, everyone, to this, our second of the Natural Science Section series of webinars. We had one last August with Judith Erb, and today we're resuming here in 2026, and we have a number more planned. So on February 28th, for example, we'll have Steve Talbot on his recent publication, Organisms and Their Evolution, Agency in the Meaning, the Drama of Life.
Barry, could you mute?
I just muted him. You can do the same. So, and then on March 28th, Dr. Arie Boss will be back again. And I just want to point to our in-person conference, April 30th to May 3rd in College Park, Maryland, where our keynote speaker will be Michael Judge, and he'll be presenting on evolution. So I hope you can join us for those events. We are running sort of ragged due to some unusual issues, but hopefully we'll get all these things cleared up as we're using a new Zoom account, as we're updating our websites and going through trials and errors and all that. So Judith, I turn it over to you to introduce us to your friend Arie Boss.
Yes. Well, I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Arie Boss. Arie van Ammeringen and I have been working diligently to translate his book from the Dutch so that we can all read it. And I want to tell you, it's a wonderful book. I have been so privileged to be able to be reading this book in advance and work with it. It is a delightful book. The title is Mind and Matter: The Evolution of the Self. And this book has been very popular in the Netherlands, and it has been popular since 2008. Finally, we over here in America will get a chance to read it. And we expect that it will be actually published around May of 2026. So we're looking forward to that. Dr. Boss really comes at things from a angle which says, now, what is this about? Why would this occur? What is evolution doing? What is its purpose? All kinds of very good questions, and looking at the scientific data that's out there and saying, what is it telling us? What is it saying that if you just look at it without an assumption about it, what is it saying? It's a fascinating read. It really leads you through some very careful thinking. And Dr. Boss will be presenting another workshop for us in March, or another webinar rather. And that one will be focused more upon neuroscience and how the brain is not a biological computer, which is a book which is already published in English. It's available through Florist Books. And that one, I think we've sent you a link so that you can obtain that before the March one. But as far as the current talk, you'll have to wait till May to be able to read about it. But tonight or today, you can hear about it. So the many thoughts that Arie Boss has brought about evolution, what it's about, why is it happening, what does the data say, what matters, all of those questions. I turn over to you now, Dr. Boss.
Thank you, Judith. I'm delighted too that you all want to hear me because you don't know me yet. But well, good afternoon to you, North America. I'm here in Amsterdam, and it's already 7:30 in the evening. But this afternoon, your afternoon, I would like to tell you about the goal of evolution, and that evolution has a particular driving force. That's not a popular subject in biology because most biologists are still convinced that evolution has no goal nor driving force, but happened completely by chance. because it is believed to be driven by accidental or random genetic mutations that undergo natural selection, which is determined by conflict. The problem with natural selection is that it does eliminate only, and it doesn't create. So it can't be a driving force. Why is it important that evolution has a purpose? Because that's the only way we can take serious our existence, spiritually speaking. Why would human life be precious? And why that of our companions in nature, the other organisms? In other words, if we are random things, there's no use in searching for meaning. And why is it important that evolution is not the outcome of conflict? Well, I would say for the same reason. And the last question, of course, is what then is the goal, the purpose of evolution? Well, we will soon find out. I hope I will be able to show you this afternoon that evolution has a direction and is based on cooperation and symbiosis. Because we will have to talk about a history of probably 4.3 billion years in 1 hour. I will only show you the steps made in macroevolution. What I mean with macroevolution you will see here. First picture, please. Andrew?
Yes,
Are you able to?
I'm here. I just a minute. I got behind because of trying to alert people. So let me get this screen. I want them to see screen one. Okay. And just a second.
Yes, no, that's not it.
No, just a second. And then
Just a second.
just a
Okay,
second.
the next one.
This one to this one, and then hit page
And
down.
then, yes, this is the picture I wanted to see. So macroevolution is not the diversification inside species like the different dogs in the right picture, but the big steps between the main taxons that you see simplified in the left. Stop the picture, please. You can stop the picture, yes. Before we discuss the driving force of evolution, I want to show you pictures at first as a teaser to make two things clear. First, that evolution is not random, because there's one phenomenon that shows directly that evolution has at least a tendency, if not a goal. And that is the so-called convergent evolution. That means that the same development takes place in different areas on Earth and in different times in organisms with totally different ancestry, while the outcome is that they look surprisingly the same. At the same time, you will see the illustration of the recent scientific conviction that DNA is not the blueprint of an organism. We will show some now. Next picture, please. Andrew? Yes. Yes. Fine. Well, you see, at the left there's a flying or gliding squirrel from North America and Canada, your place, and at the right there's a sugar glider from Australia. The first is a mammal and the second is a marsupial. So genetically, they have nothing in common. They come from completely different evolutionary lines. But evolution in mammals in North America and marsupials in Australia produced an almost complete identical animal with totally different genes. And that is called convergent evolution. There are many more examples like these. Next picture, please. Yes, well, the upper two are the ones that you saw already, and under them are two jumping mice called jerboa. One is a marsupial from Australia, and the other one is, I think, from Africa. And the third are two moles. One is the mammal, and the other is a marsupial. But not only mammals and marsupials can look the same, also mammals of different taxons and living far from each other. Next picture, please. Yes. At the left row is from Africa and the right row is from South America. The upper 4 in the left row are hoofed animals, and the upper 3 in the right one are rodents. Well, they don't look exactly the same, but they're almost the same, I would say. And they don't have any genes in common. I don't stop the picture, please, because I will not use time to name them all of them. And if this is not convincing enough, you know that the history of life knew many mass extinctions. The funny thing is that many animals re-emerged anew after this extinction, as if evolution had no choice than to do what it was supposed to do. Next picture, please. Yes. What is found in this respect are raccoon-type animals, otters, aardvarks, and pangolins, and armadillos. So the next one too. Yes, it's aardvark and armadillo. But how is this possible? What drives evolution? Take a look at this picture. Next picture, please. Yes, this is the first living cell as proposed by science, and it is called LUCA, the last universal common ancestor. When you read about the properties this cell must have, you will read something like this. Next picture, please. Well, don't be afraid, you don't have to remember all this, because they missed the point completely. Stop the picture, please, so you don't have to be bothered by this picture. Because to what end are those properties that you saw? To make possible the most important trait that is demarcating life, or a living organism, from the lifeless nature. And that's quite simple. A living organism has an order, a dynamic order, that it tries to keep up against the entropy of the lifeless world that surrounds it, and wants to break it down. Because the organism wants to survive for a longer time. In other words, every organism, LUCA included, tries to sustain its order by defending its autonomy. And this order is not caused by chance, it's goal-directed. All the processes in the cell are goal-directed. This autonomy, in the case of LUCA, is defended in the first place by having a cell wall between itself and the hostile environment. But there is something else it has to do. To be able to sustain the dynamics in its order, it does have to import energy. So it has to be able to exchange matter with its surroundings. It needs to do that for its metabolism, and that makes it vulnerable. So, as long as it is living, it never can stop defending itself from its lifeless surroundings where only entropy and chance or statistics reign. So, and this is the takeaway message, an organism strives to autonomy. That's its driving force, and you could call this the definition of life. And we have here at the same time the driving force of evolution, defending itself against entropy by trying to be as autonomous as possible, while at the same time exchanging stuff with the outer world. Not only food, but also air, and in the sea, oxygen or carbon dioxide. The animal world needs plants, and for the gas exchange, animals and plants need each other. That's also again, a fundamental symbiosis. That's not again, that's the first time that I mentioned this, I think. We will see that in every major step in evolution, that it means a major step in having more autonomy and make a safer place in the organism for metabolism and other functions like replication, and getting more mobile. Only organisms, living creatures, try to do so. Let us return to Luca. Maybe you can show us Luca again, Andrew. The cell is the one before this one. Yes. Such a cell, if it should be found now, should be called a bacteria. Bacteria never come alone. That would mean a certain death to them. So Luca can't have been alone, but can only have survived in a colony. You know, there's safety in numbers. So no conflict yet, no nature red in tooth and claw, but cooperation and symbiosis. How this Luca originated is still an enigma, because despite being the first and the simplest representative of life, it needs very complex characteristics. The most prominent feature of bacteria is the fact that they lack a nucleus. Their DNA is lying loosely in the cell in a kind of loop, as you can see. The oldest kind of them lived in hostile regions, down at the seafloor, where volcanic gases are squirted out, and they are called archaea. And they are considered a different kind. These archaea made Earth less hostile, so bacteria, as we know, could emerge, and archaea stayed in their hostile places. Bacteria are very vulnerable. They have only a cell wall between the cell and the environment, and an inner membrane where all the metabolism takes place, very near the lifeless world outside. But the important question is this: how did bacteria arise from archaea? Just random mutations? Or did these changes occur purposely? Next picture, please, Andrew. The next one. Yes, this one. Thank you. The evolutionary biologist Richard Lenski did an experiment on the evolution of E. coli bacteria that started in January 1988 and is still going on. He took one strain and divided it in 12 that all were placed on a medium with very limited glucose, and glucose is a food that E. coli bacteria needs very badly, and lots of citrate that coli bacteria can't digest in aerobic oxygenic circumstances. The 12 strains that started as one grew very slow, but later took a spurt. They turned out to look the same as colonies, and that is the way you normally identify a bacterial species, and not like the original strain. And all were able to grow in these unfavorable circumstances. And one even turned out to be able to digest citrate in aerobic circumstances. But they differed genetically very, very much. And obviously, the different mutations in its DNA were beneficial for adaptation, because they all survived, still today. That is one of the reasons to think that these mutations are probably not random, because random mutations are mostly bad news for an organism. I know that as a doctor. And traits are very seldom the result of one gene, but nearly all the time the outcome of many genes. So, what happened? It's time to reveal a very important process now. Next picture, please. Yes, there we have This is the biologist Barbara McClintock. She found in the 40s and 50s that corn, maize, is able to adjust its own genome to stressful situations just by reshuffling the genes or doubling them. And these changes are inherited by their offspring. She called the genes that cause this jumping genes, or more scientifically, transposons or transposable elements. She was laughed at, of course, because a woman can, of course, not find something that will change fixed convictions. And that conviction was that there are good reasons to think that acquired traits are not inheritable, since the reproductive line is standing apart from the rest of the cells of the body, and since the reproductive cells erase the so-called epigenetic changes, I will explain that later, that happened in the parent. 40 years later, she got the Nobel Prize. 20 years ago, two other ladies, Eva Jablonka and Marion Lamb, wrote a remarkable book about how evolutionary changes occur. Evolution in 4 dimensions. Next picture, please. Yes. The 4 dimensions are genetic, epigenetic, behavioral, and symbolic. Now I must explain the word epigenetic first. Maybe you all know what it is, but I will do it all the same. Remember that all my cells have the same genome, but the tissues, and so the cells that belong to these tissues, look and behave very differently. The cells of my tongue are completely different from the cells of my kidneys. That is because they make use of different genes of my genome. Some are silenced and other ones are expressed. The genome is processed by the organism to make it possible to have different tissues with different functions. That is called epigenetics. The same thing happens in genomes of organisms that face awkward conditions like drought or higher or lower temperatures, fast-running predators, or maybe just different conditions or different behavior of the organism itself. In time, that change can be translated into the genome by transposons that make more copies of genes, reshuffle them, or just let them disappear. And when the organisms have offspring, their genome is passed on, because it is found that such changes can occur also in the germline, the reproductive cells. We will see examples of this later. It is important to emphasize that epigenetics don't change the genome, but only silence some genes and express others. They can be undone, but the transposons make changes in the genome itself, and that can't be undone. Maybe you can stop the picture. The authors show that changes in evolution go by different steps. First, a behavioral change occurs. Then that step is translated into the genome of that organism by epigenetics, a translation that expresses some genes and silences others. Maybe you see something familiar in those 4 dimensions, because the symbolic change that can cause the other changes is limited to humans. In humans, we can have behavioral changes that are caused by culture. So we have genetic, which is physical. Genes are just molecules that don't live by themselves and they don't do anything by themselves. They just are read by the cell and replicated by the cell. And how does the cell know what to do? It's the organism, finally, that decides. Well, secondly, we have epigenetic, which is a life process. So you can say it's etheric. And behavior is, of course, the result of the astral body. while the symbolic thinking is limited to humans, a product of the eye. As far as I know, Jablonka and Lamb are not anthroposophists. Sorry. I will show you some examples. Normally, people can't digest milk when they are no baby anymore, because then you stop producing lactase. But people who tended livestock and began to drink their milk started to change their genetic makeup to be able to continue to make lactase. People in Africa and people in Europe did this, thousands of years ago, of course. But the genetic background of this continuous producing of lactase appears to be completely different in both continents. The other example is this. In Holland, children whose mothers were pregnant during the so-called hunger winter of the Second World War appeared to be prone to a bunch of illnesses and conveyed this to their offspring. The German biologist Joachim Bauer tells in his Das kooperative Gen, the cooperative gene, about the immunity for the AIDS virus. Monkeys and apes have 8 to 10 copies of a particular gene that codes for the immunity against HIV. So they will not get sick or are able to recover very quickly. Man has only 1 to at most 6 copies of this gene and is very vulnerable. In Africa, women with HIV that survived long enough to give birth to a child provided a surprise. Their children had many, many more copies of that gene and were protected against the illness. That was the result of epigenetic changes in the mother that were successively genetically passed on to the children's genomes by transposons. Mutations occur more in genes that can be useful if altered, like the ones for neurons, the senses, and the immune system. In fact, our neurons differ in their genomes, as do our immune cells. While mutations in genes that are important for our survival as a species are quickly repaired by the cell. So it's not, or not only, natural selection that keeps the most vital individuals in the run, but their own genetic repair mechanisms. So we may conclude that the first bacteria may have emerged goal-directed. The archaea started in deep sea, as is thought now, near the black smokers that bring very hot water out of the Earth's core with toxic chemicals that the archaea thrive on. When bacteria came halfway up to the surface waters, they experienced sunlight, and some used the pigment, rhodopsin, to produce energy, and some others used chlorophyll and evolved photosynthesis. So blue algae emerged. That are not algae, but bacteria, cyanobacteria. And they changed the environment in a definite way. They produced oxygen. We still can find the remnants of these cyanobacteria because they also produced calcium, layer by layer, and are known by the name of stromatolites. Next picture, please. That's what they look like. And I can show you a piece that I took from Namibia. They just gave it to me because nobody ever was interested. It doesn't look interested indeed, but I cherish it as one of my finest finds. How could bacteria that are vulnerable because all of their metabolism is taken care of in their membrane, very near the hostile outside world, become more autonomous? It would be safer if these functions were moved further inside. Next picture, please. Yes, good. Well, that happens in the second important step in evolution, the birth of cells with a nucleus and other structures such as organelles, that are little organs like mitochondria and such, and inside membranes like the one called endoplasmatic reticulum, that take over the task of the inner membrane that lines the cell wall of the bacteria. They are called eukaryotes. Karyon is nucleus in Greek. The bacteria are called prokaryotes. How did that happen? Here we have to introduce another woman scientist who was laughed at when she proposed something. She proposed that some bacteria merged together to form eukaryotes. Because mitochondria, for instance, have their own DNA that is different from the DNA that is in the nucleus. And the chloroplasts that carry chlorophyll in algae and plant leaves for photosynthesis have DNA that resembles that of cyanobacteria. Next picture, please. Yes, this woman is Lynn Margulis, who defended in 1965 what she called endosymbiosis as the main driving force in evolution of eukaryotes. In the 80s, her theory was finally accepted. The thing is that oxygen is a very toxic substance for archaea, for everybody. If you have too much oxygen, it's very bad for you. Well, the archaea defended themselves by incorporating aerobic bacteria that became mitochondria, the starting point for animals. And some of them also incorporated cyanobacteria that became chlorophyll-containing chloroplasts, and these became algae and finally plants. Next picture, please. Yes, the blue one is an archaea, and the red one a bacteria. Now there is consensus that archaea and bacteria merged together to form the first eukaryotes. Here we see a pure kind of symbiosis, and not conflict, to take evolution further. While the result is that plants and animals need each other, not only for food, but plants make oxygen that the animals need, while the animals produce carbon dioxide in the air, which the plants need. That is the biggest symbiosis we know, I would say. You can stop the picture now, again. What could make the single-cellular eukaryotes, as there are protists like amoebas and paramecium, the ancestors of the animal kingdom, and algae, yeasts, etc., more autonomous? We can't say it often enough. There is safety in numbers. So the next big step is multicellular organisms. It started probably with sponges, because these organisms can be sieved to get single cells that can grow to new sponges. So it started with single cells that came together, we think. Symbiosis again. But later, multicellular organisms were composed in such a way that their cells can't be taken apart without losing their life. When did this start? The Earth has often been covered by ice for a long time, the whole Earth. What has been named snowball Earth. Ice reflects sunlight and its heat, and that's called albedo. So this situation cannot easily be ended, only by volcanic activity. When that happened, suddenly many forms of multicellular life emerged. This is called the Cambrian explosion, starting about 541 million years ago, during about 100 million years, as we know now, so it hardly can be called an explosion. To be honest, this was not really the starting point. Before that, these strange organisms lived under the ice. Next picture, please. Yes. This is called the Ediacara period, and before that there was another snowball Earth where only archaea and bacteria lived. Archaea and bacteria survived until now, but most of these life forms that you see here are extinct nowadays. But you can see plants, jellyfishes that are still living, and leaf-like creatures that probably are some kind of animals too, but we don't know them anymore. There should have been sponges too in this picture. But in the Cambrian era, things looked not much more familiar, although you can see that they are the ancestors of most of the species we know now. Next picture, please. Yes. For instance, this trilobite, you see it on the floor, and you see it in the left upper angle, and you can also see it here. The trilobite is an ancestor of the arthropods. By the way, the trilobite also emerged again and again after 5 different extinctions, and every time a little bit different. And this ammonite, we see, no, they were later, the ammonites, so they are not on this picture, but oh, they are. This one is very, better see it like this, very heavy. The ammonites are also extinct, but they gave birth to the Nautilus. And in the Nautilus is a sepia or octopus-like animal. And the sepia and the octopus have dropped the shell. It is time that also the first vertebrates, animals with a spine, arose, namely fish. You can stop the picture now. Yes. The fish are the starting point of an evolution line that finally created Homo sapiens, and that's where we are foremost interested in, aren't we? A funny thing happened on the way to the vertebrates. They turned their body 180 degrees behind their brains. And that was very important for us because it enabled us to incarnate our spirit as a unity, our I. Why? Because the invertebrates have 2 nerve cords, one for each cerebral hemisphere. Next picture, please. Yes. Well, you see upper left, the Hydra has no brains at all. So there is no nerve cord either. But the flatworm, upper right, has a simple construction. The 2 parts of the primordial brain, which are called ganglia, have their own nerve cord. What effect could this have if we humans should still have this configuration? In this way, you should never be able to experience unity in yourself. You would have to divide yourself in a left and a right me. The earthworm, under left, and the grasshopper, under right, have the same problem, although their nerve cords touch each other, but they don't merge. All the 3 have their nerve cords under, in the belly. After the turning, which is called decussation, the neural cord is in the back. We have it in the back. This is the reason why our left cerebral hemisphere serves the right side of our body and vice versa. And this applies to all vertebrates. And this is a very important event. But why did it happen? Evolution scientists have no answer. Is it possible that a random mutation caused this? I don't know of a gene or a set of genes that can cause this. But the effect is very important. This crossing makes it more easy to feel yourself as a unity. Even Rudolf Steiner says the same thing about that. So we are fishes now. What can fishes do to get more autonomy, to get more freedom? Because autonomy means also freedom. What to think of going on land? But before we can do that, the barren landscape has to offer more hospitality. Food, for instance, in the form of plants. We haven't talked about plants until now, but they are the offspring of green algae that gave room to seaweed and later again seagrass. Well, you can still see what came first on land. Lichens, of course. Next picture, please. Good. What are lichens? It's a fungus that is living together with the cyanobacteria and doesn't need roots. There we have symbiosis again. Then came, of course, moss, that has no roots either, and then the ferns. These have roots nowadays. But where did these come from? Because seaweeds don't have them. Here also the fungi gave a helping hand. The mycorrhizae filaments that still work together with the roots that developed later formed the roots of the first land plants. So the fungi preceded the plants and offered them help. Symbiosis again. So now we are able to conquer the land as fishes. Next picture, please. Yes, good. Sorry, I have to take some water. That happened more than once during the Devonian era in about 12 million years, and on different places on Earth, far apart from each other. Convergent evolution again. Why they did so? Scientists think it happened in shallow waters that were warmed, so the oxygen disappeared, and the fishes had to get their head up in the air to get some oxygen. Well, we don't know exactly how it happened. With these animals, the amphibian kingdom emerged. You can still see the fish in most of the amphibians. The undulating way of walking of newts and salamanders. Their limbs sideways that were, how do we call that? Well, their reproduction is also more autonomous. Fish spawn by letting go their eggs and sperm in the water. Amphibians are the first to copulate. But amphibians still need water on their skin, and their eggs have to mature in water. So amphibians are not complete autonomous land animals. For that, they have to get rid of their dependency of water. So reptiles emerged. They still have their limbs sideways and have an undulating gait. Think of crocodiles, turtles, and iguanas. They can, because of their thicker skin, endure drought. And their eggs can do that too. That is because the eggs have an extra membrane called amnion that keeps all the moisture inside. Next picture, please. Well, you see the embryo sitting inside of the amnion, the embryo sitting inside of the embryon cavity. Can you see that? What the biggest thing that you see there is an egg of a chicken, by the way, is the biggest thing is the yolk sac, but the embryo will grow faster and faster, and the amnion will keep around it. From then on in evolution, the next vertebrate groups, the mammals and the birds, are called amniotes. Next picture, please. Yes, this is a human fetus surrounded by the amniotic cavity. Stop the pictures, please. Oh, well, you can keep it. You can keep it. Then maybe you want to see a bit more. The next step is warm-bloodedness. That's also a big step in autonomy. Cold-blooded animals need the heat of the day to be able to move. I was once on a crocodile farm in South Africa in the cool morning, And the boy who showed us what was happening there walked on the backs of the very big crocodiles. They didn't move at all. Warm-blooded animals are autonomous regarding the environmental temperature. Well, what groups comes first? Dinosaurs, mammals, marsupials, birds? Speaking in a geological time scale, all together. We used to think that dinosaurs were reptiles. They aren't. They had feathers and were warm-blooded. Most species later evolved into birds. Mammals and marsupials have fur for keeping warm, and human beings clothes. The reptiles still had their limbs sideways and were not very fast. The birds and their dinosaur ancestors had 2 legs under their body. The other dinosaurs and the mammals and marsupials also turned their forelimbs under their body. The forelimbs backwards and the hind limbs frontwards. So they all could uplift themselves from the ground and run faster, and so be more autonomous. Flying, of course, is a huge step in autonomy. And having a womb plus placenta or a pouch gives also a more autonomous way of reproduction. So we see in macroevolution a clear tendency towards more autonomy or freedom. That's the driving force and at the same time the goal. Speaking about freedom, a last remark about the place of man in evolution. Of course, we stand in the evolutionary line of the animals, and of course our ancestors are primates. But are we just a primate? Primates are precocial animals. That means they already are independent when they are born. Next picture, please. Yes. A newborn monkey can cling into the fur of its mother and can go everywhere with the family and play with its siblings. And there are many more biological differences. I will tell you some of them. A human baby is helpless for a long, long time. Even genetically, there are differences. Apes have 24 pairs of chromosomes. Humans, 23. Although chimps and humans share about 95% of the genes, humans have 20 new gene families compared to chimps, while chimps have only 2 other families compared to humans. And those 20 new families of genes are mainly about the brain and further about the senses and the immune systems. The scientists that call humans naked apes do this because all kinds of behavior that were considered exclusively human are found in a much more primitive way also in animals. I would say luckily enough. Otherwise, we would have to act against our nature. But we do have some exclusively human traits. Our upright gait, no animal has that in the same elegant and practical way. Next picture, please. Yes. And that upright gait gave way to our hands and made them free. And that our human hands are unique for the precision grip. The hand was, next picture, please. The hand with the stone is from an ape, as you can see. That's not really a precision grip. And then our brains. Next picture, please. As you can see, the brain takes the most room in the human skull, and this organ is the culmination of freedom. In our mind, we can go everywhere in place and time. We can do anything in our imagination. And in our language, we can say anything that we can think of. We are the only organism that brings new achievements on this earth. But the intelligence that our brains offer comes with a cost. It makes us prone to mental illnesses. You see here how you can distinguish adult animals from hominins. the foramen magnum that is in the center of the skull. That is because we stand upright. When you're standing on the floor, you have your foramen magnum in the hind of your skull. But the newborn monkey has that too. Next picture, please. You see, they sit right up when they're still a baby, and their face is also more human-like. That's why we like young animals. They mostly have faces that are more human-like. It's obvious that man is no accidental creature. We would have evolved anyway. Next picture, please. Yes. Here we see a beautiful example of convergent evolution. Many of these ancestors are not even really ancestors in our evolutionary line, but only lived in the same time as the other hominins. This picture seems to suggest that apes evolved from the hominin line instead of the idea that we evolved from them. You see, but all the hominins had the possibility to develop into Homo sapiens. Most scientists agree that fire making is the start of the birth of Homo sapiens and possibly Denisovans and Neanderthals. Next picture, please. Yes, it all started with this: control of the element fire. From wood in this case. Now we use fossilized fuel. Not a very good idea after all. The oldest fireplace that is found is 100,000 years old and is found in England not very long ago. That's the time when Denisovans, the Neanderthals, lived together with Homo sapiens. The control of fire allowed us to cook food and scare off predators and stinging insects, so we could sleep on the ground and have much more RAM sleep. Why is that important? Because during RAM sleep, we are paralyzed, which is not a good idea while sleeping in a nest in the trees, as our ancestors did. RAM sleep, or REM sleep, helps to make you creative. With man, evolution is not about biology or behavior anymore, but about culture. Think about what is most important for your survival and autonomy or freedom. Is it your biology or is it the land where you live? And the cultural factor is maybe the biggest step that was ever taken in evolution. And that's why I want to suggest that Homo sapiens is not just a species in the order of primates, but a new order or taxon in evolution. 1 month ago, Nature published an article about the finds of mandibles, teeth, and vertebra of the last common ancestor of Homo sapiens together with the Neanderthals and Denisovans in a Moroccan cave dating back 773,000 years. These could be the 3 species of this new taxon, because we think they all had at that time a more or less identical culture. And we mingled, so we are mixed now. Well, that's what I wanted to tell you. And you can stop the picture, yes. A pause. I let it to you, Andrew, or to you, Judith. What do we do now?
All right, but now we can take questions in
Yes.
for
Okay.
Arie. And
Yes.
if you must, now's the time to slip off for a bio break if you need it. And if you can, and I see some people already know how, there's along the bottom of your Zoom window is a react button. If you click the react button, the left click, you'll see a bunch of options. And one is raise hand. That's the second one up from the bottom. So if you click raise hand, like I just did, you can see then I know to call on you. Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
And
I see that I can read that you did.
so,
So,
instead of raising your hand on your screen like this, it'll be easier if you click that virtual hand. And I'd like to start us off with a question for you, Arie, if that's okay.
yes,
Um,
yes, it's okay.
uh, Actually, I've got quite a few questions for you, but um, I think you said something about um, evolution is not so much about biology, that macroevolution has a clear tendency toward freedom. Did I catch that right? And if so, could you tell us more about the importance of freedom in this? What, in a sense, somebody might ask,
Yes,
what does freedom have to do with evolution?
yes. What's so important about freedom? Oh, it's a good question, but most people would think, isn't love much more important?
Oh, yeah.
Well, love that is not given freely has no worth. So first there must be freedom to be able to do to love or to hate. If you're not capable to do other things, then love has no worth. Neither have good deeds if you don't have the freedom of doing something bad. Do you live in the USA? That used to be called itself the land of the free, wasn't it?
Right.
But I also mentioned symbiosis, brotherhood. And when you add equality, you have the trinity that have to go together. You know, Spinoza said that the task of the state was to make possible freedom and safety for the citizens and free thinking. But maybe I should mention Rudolf Steiner, who said that we are the 10th hierarchy that has to develop freedom as a new element in the spiritual world.
Wonderful. All right.
Yeah.
You mentioned 24 pairs of chromosomes,
Yes.
23 in the human. I'm going to ask you, is this possibly related to, in Genesis, um, to make um, a helpmate, a life mate for Adam, a rib pair was taken. And it's very interesting that if you look at the number of ribs, we have a rib less than the same rib pair, less than the same uh, other apes and so on.
Yes.
And if you look at the ribs as the sign of the moon, then you have a full moon, then you've got all the stages of the waning or the waxing moon going down to the new moon. And so you have a total of 28. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's very interesting. I don't
Yes.
know if you've got a comment, where is, I don't know if anybody's looked at this relationship of ribs and chromosomes and so
This
on.
is a very, very interesting point of view, but I've never thought about that, I must say. Um, the only thing I can say is that uh, you can you can say that humans are stay youthful. That's called neoteny, and but the youthful apes have also one rib more than we have, so that can't be the explanation. No, I don't know. It's it's interesting. I have no answers to that. I'm sorry.
Well, there's a related question. And I remember some anthroposophists complaining about this, but if you go back to the 1970s and 80s, um, there was a field that still exists called creationism.
Yes,
And there was a
and
battle between,
intelligent design,
yes,
or is
intelligent
it not the
design.
same?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I'm getting at. Right. And so there
yes,
was a battle for a good 25 years between the creationists and the Darwinians.
yes,
And then it just kind of fizzled away but both sides still take their positions. And I don't know if you have run into this, but do you find that the creationists come and embrace you, and or do both sides hate you?
um, I'm not a creationist in that sense that you are bringing up now. I think we can say that nature is a creation by itself, but in nature is created the possibility of evolution by creating life, and that had its own purpose, as I told you, and that was, of course, meant to be. In that sense, I must say I'm a creationist too.
Right.
But
Well,
I also believe in evolution.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
but in a
um,
different way. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
It makes your struggle all the more difficult to be heard, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
Well, we'll go to Ted out there in New York City. Ted.
Uh, Thank you very much. I'm absolutely ignorant on this subject, so forgive my stupidity about this. Two things. In anthroposophy, we always talk about evolution of consciousness. So I
Yes.
sort of discount all the other evolutions. But uh, I thought that Steiner described, uh, for instance, the apes coming down and incarnating before humans, but humans were in a way superior, but they weren't on the earth yet.
Yes.
So it's sort
Not
of
only not only the apes, all the rest of the creation, well, humans were first, you can say. You can see that in the, well, I'm sorry, I must let you ask your question. I'm sorry. I will wait.
the point being, it's
Mm.
sort of if humans were superior before they came down, uh, but they waited for all the inferior to incarnate. The sequence seems strange to me.
And well, you can say that uh, it had to begin with the one cell, and we already were there, but not on Earth. And that's what Steiner also says, that life began, but we were not on Earth yet, not in a physical way. And we had to wait for a body that was able to incarnate in as a spirit. And for that reason, this decussation, as I told you, that 180 degrees turning of our body, of the body of the vertebrates, was very important.
Asking the question seems to have cleared it up, and you have cleared it up.
Yes.
But you also said that our evolution now hinges on culture, and that's where the evolution of consciousness and freedom really comes in. Is that correct?
Well, one can say that uh, um, uh, well, I forgot the word. What did you say? I say it every day, but I can't find it now.
Well, I'm meaning that you said that the evolution
Bewustzijn,
now is in the cultural sphere. So for us to evolve now, we have to gain that freedom in this cultural sphere.
yes, yes, but conscience, or how do you call that, is already starting in bacteria. Bacteria can sense what is around them, and they can act in that sensing what is happening around them. and
Oh.
but they don't um, uh, they don't, well, they don't feel it, they don't know it, that they sense it. It's not in their conscience, and that is also an evolution. The higher in animals we come, the more the animals know what they are feeling and what they're wanting to do, and so on. And the more intelligent they become. Steiner also said you don't need a brain to think, and he tells about wasps that can act very thoughtful when they find food for uh, their children. And so he says it has nothing to do, thinking has nothing to do with the brain, because animals, small animals, can also think. Insects, for instance. And now we know that even plants can act on what they sense. They don't even have nervous tissue, but they can act on for instance, being eaten.
If I might add to Ted's first question, Ted,
Yes.
you probably know Aaron Fried Pfeiffer. And
Yes.
I
What?
believe it was him that drew a diagram that showed
Yes.
human evolution coming down and
Yes.
Earth evolution coming up, or physical evolution.
Yes.
And that coming down, there's drop-off points down to this evolution. So you get all these things that Arie's talked about dropping down until you finally get to this point where the human being can actually take up that body for what it
Yes.
needs in evolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's a very interesting diagram.
So we are a family of all the organisms on this earth, and the nearest family are the primates, of course. But we are not the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You gave several examples of convergent evolution and
Yes.
animals that look the same, that came from different places, and it makes you think that the natural selection is impelling the organism towards a particular form, and as you said, not towards a particular gene or DNA sequence. But is that not a somehow a brilliance of natural selection, that there's more than one way to skin a cat? There's more than one
Yes.
way to become an armadillo or whatever.
Yes. Yes. And well, what you can conclude is that it's not the genes that do it, because the genes are totally different. It's the behavior, I think. It's the, how do you call that? A niche
The
in
environment.
nature that calls for an, what does Aristotle call this? Well,
Mhm.
I forgot. Oh, it's awful.
There's somehow a
I did.
biological role that gets
Yes.
filled by evolution. Mhm.
Yes, all the roles must be taken in nature.
Mhm.
You can say that, and then the genes are not the most important thing in that.
Mhm.
There's Stephen Gould and Niels Eldredge talked about punctuated equilibrium, as you probably know,
Mhm.
and they found out that it was not ages that took evolution to give a change, but it happened very briefly, very suddenly, and the species kept the same for a very long time. And that's, you can only explain that in the way that I told you in my lecture.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Barry next.
Hello, thank you so much. Just the idea of convergent evolution, that leads to the idea that there is some kind of form ready.
Yes, yes,
present.
that's
yet,
what I was searching for. Aristotle called that, and I can't say it
entelechy.
now. Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
entelechy. Yes.
And yet, there are new entelechies arising through
Yes.
history, you know?
Yeah.
And what is form? Where does it come from?
Yes, that's science has no answer to that. And that's a question I still have. Why did the dinosaurs come on this earth and went away again? What was their role? Things like that are very interesting, I think, but I don't have a real answer for that. Well, what I do know is when the dinosaurs still were here, I think we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a contingent history.
Yeah. Yes. Contingencies. Yeah.
Arie van Amagen, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Arie. He has the same name as I have,
Yeah.
first name. I wanted to elaborate about how the science world today is talking about everything you can explain by
DNA?
Artificial
no, ADN.
AI. DNA.
DNA.
DNA. Yes.
Yeah, because we used to say everything is in your gene, you know, but is the
Yes.
scientific world evolving in this comprehension of
Yes,
explanation?
they're evolving in another way. They say, well, it's not the DNA.
Okay.
It's the DNA is not our blueprint. They can't find a real blueprint. For instance, insects that have three metamorphoses, egg, how do you call that in English? Larvae, and then adult, or sometimes 4 different forms, all with the same genes and many and very, very different forms. So you can say you can find some things in the genes. You can find if somebody has blue eyes or brown eyes. You can find that in the genome, but not what he's looking like or she. No.
Set there. We'll go until 3 o'clock. That's another 10 minutes. And
Yes.
Next up, we have Stacy and Sophia, and then Daniel.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to ask about the relationship of the human being as we take in the world, as we consume the world, as we utilize and nourish the world. The opposite is we then give forth, we excrete that which we have utilized in the world. And when we excrete, we then are able to have the world itself mirror back into us if we have the consciousness to receive it. And the mirroring back is a divine process. Now we're able to do this through imaginative consciousness. We know the angelic world is then as participatory within this as we are within it. So within this realm of what you call the cultural, the relationship of the inner and outer, now we're going into a realm where the divine and the human and they have always had this, but our relationship now is moving into a direction to be able to utilize our gifts in imaginative consciousness. And Steiner said, well, this will change our DNA, because then as we ingest the world, we will then further excrete the world, and so we will have a division within humanity. And I just wanted to put that into it and any comment you might have within that.
Well, we do change our own DNA all the time in our brains. The neurons have all different genomes, and in our immune system, and that's a real change. And then also we have the epigenetics, as I've told you. But I missed your point, I think, what should happen in this world. You were talking about that.
Right. As we grow in our imaginative consciousness, surely
Yes.
how we utilize and how we interpret what the world is offering shifts as well. So there's a symbiotic process of growth that is
Yes.
taking place that is non-physical, and yet it's changing our DNA.
Yes. And what you say, we are the only organisms that use their consciousness to change the world.
Right. Absolutely. And that is
Yes.
what separates us from,
Yes.
and we've always done that.
Yes,
But
we've always done that.
But
Yes.
now it's into the realm where we can consciously be conscious within our imaginative consciousness, which is a whole huge step.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I doubt if we do a good job on this until now.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's go to Judith next.
I'm wondering if it could be that we are in a process that's intending to find a more proper balance, and we're experimenting, or our evolution is experimenting with us, so that we have an increased set of things that are manifesting in humanity. You have, on the one hand, you have a lot more people who are identified as autistic. And I don't think that that is just a matter of that they now know how to diagnose it. I think that there is something in a autistic human that lets them disconnect somewhat from what might be an excessive identification with a current culture. Like they can look more objectively, externally than people who are, embedded in this culture very, very deeply. And out of that embeddedness, we tend to get into our tribes and our wars and all of that sort of stuff. And I can't help but wonder whether that might be something that's trying to balance itself toward a direction by experimenting with the balance between cultural identification and the way that humans connect, and the ability to look at the big picture from the outside and be very logical about it. What do you think?
What I do think is that too much cultural identification doesn't make you free. You must be able to see other cultures and see it without any ordeal.
Sympathy and antipathies.
Yes, well, with sympathy and empathy.
Mhm.
And now we have a time that people identify themselves very much with their culture, with their race, or with religion, or things like that. And I think our evolution should take us out of that to be more free. Is this what you meant?
Yes, that's getting to it. I was
Okay.
particularly wondering though about the phenomenon of autism in that relationship, because what's different about
The phenomenon of
autism?
autism. Oh, autism.
What's different,
Yes.
the autistic human is they don't do that identification
I
with.
thought you said artistic human, but
No.
autistic. Yes. Now I know. Well, an autist person is not very free because he can't shut off the world as we can. And that's a big problem. It's very nice that we can shut off too many things that come into our senses. They can't. And so they must be helped with that. Is this what you meant, or?
I just wanted your thoughts on how that is. Yeah. That. Mhm. Thank
We'll
you.
go to Mark then next. Hello, Mark. We're going to come off of mute. Thank you.
Hi there. I guess you can hear me.
Yes, I
So,
do.
Dr. Boss, thank you so much for that wonderful panoramic picture you gave to us of evolution. You did a wonderful job. I just want to raise a couple points. Wolfgang Schad, the
Yes.
morphologist, has been a big inspiration, a teacher of mine. He talks about this polarity between adaptation versus emancipation, right? Over time, that we see organisms becoming more adapted, more specialized to their particular environments. But on the other
Yes.
hand, with human evolution, there's been other tendency, which
Yes.
freedom, it's emancipation.
Yes, we are not specialized.
Exactly, right. Emancipation. And in the great panoramic view of the history of evolutionary thought, before Darwin published his book in 1858, there was a lot of interest and work in embryology and development.
Yes.
And then Darwin's book appeared, and then the trend moved towards looking at evolution and natural selection. And people forgot about embryology and development for a long time.
Yes, and then came Evo Devo.
Exactly, until the 30s
Yes.
and 40s, and then this relatively new field of evolutionary developmental biology, Evo Devo, developed.
Yes.
And that's really my question is, with the changing of, has to do with the changing of timing in development. So in the human being, as we develop, we're slowed down, presumably. Our snout isn't as long. Even, dogs and horses, I think you mentioned this, they have very rounded heads in the or spherical heads in the
Yes,
embryonic
and
form.
domestication is
Yes.
also
And they,
giving that change. Yes.
so,
Yeah.
and another example that has been given, if you look at the human hand in the embryo, it's not very different from our hand as an adult. If you look at a chimpanzee or a gorilla's hand, their thumb in the embryo is pretty much in the same position as ours is, but then this slides down, and they cannot do the precision grip, that you mentioned before.
Yes.
So my question to you is, I see this as the time body is the work of the etheric body working into the physical. And I wonder if you have thoughts about that. We're really looking at the influence of the etheric body in the embryological fluid form of organisms, including the human. And there it slows human development down. So we remain in what you mentioned before, a neotenic or more youthful form. And that, to me, it points to the etheric body. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, our development is slowed down, as you said, and we stay a child much longer than any animal does, and we don't specialize into well, what do you have? Running or grazing or flying. But we can do everything of that. Well, we don't graze. Most of us, only Nebuchadnezzar did, I think. But that makes that's making it possible that we can develop much more things than animals can do. And we stay softer. We don't harden that quick as the animals do. So it's also our body that is capable of developing many more things than animals can do.
Mhm.
They specialize and can do in their specialization. They can do but much better than we do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And would you attribute that to the workings of the etheric body?
Yes,
down
that's
into
the working. Well,
Okay.
and
my
also of the astral body, I think,
Mhm.
because it the conscious is working together with this. With this, it's giving our consciousness more possibilities, and that's a question of astral body, I think.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we should try to bring this to a close. And luckily, I don't see any more hands up for urgent questions. I know a few of you had questions and you've lowered your hands. So if it's okay, I think we'll try to bring this to a close. We'll have Arie back again. And of course, I put the date down, so I don't have it. Do you have it handy, Judith, in your mind? Is it March?
Maybe I know.
Yeah, it
Do
is
I know
March,
that?
the last Saturday in March. It is the 28th.
28th then, right. So March 28th, he'll be back.
28, yes.
And I threw into the chat,
The same time.
right.
Yeah.
Same time is a
Same
very
time.
scary thing to say right now.
For you the same time, and for me the same time.
Yeah.
And I will talk about sleep.
Right. Wonderful.
And
Yes.
next month, Andrew.
Right. And next month, go ahead, Barry, what is up?
Well, then Stephen Talbot will be
That's right.
speaking to us.
That'll be on February 28th. Stephen Talbot on his recent publication, Organisms and Their Evolution. So you can see this theme of evolution that we're trying to pick up, and that will carry us right into April into May. And I also will let you know, I put into the chat a lecture called The Invisible Man Within Us from February 11, 1923. And this could be good additional background to what Arie was bringing today, I think, about looking at the question, when we are born, there are two births, our physical body, but the afterbirth. And what other animals do that? What role is that? And it's some other interesting questions that we didn't get into today, but it was hinted at by Arie. So I don't know if we'll have time. You'll have talk about sleep. So anyway, anyhow, let's just bring this to a close, and we hope to see you all in the future. And thank you very much, Arie. And Judith, I don't know if you've got anything last to close us with. But
I just want to say thank you so much that this was a wonderful introduction to the many things that you have to say. And it set us with the right angles that we need to look at things from, that the positions in which we can think, not just about DNA, not just about the physical of it, but how it comes together through evolution with a direction. It was really very nourishing, and I thank you very much for being available.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And we'll see you all, I hope, in another month. Bye for now. Bye-bye.